are ready to are going to be able to start whenever they're ready, and it seems like they're both ready. So White Paladin, a card that we actually just saw last game.
Let me take you to the underworld. Time to shine, Daria.
Alright, well, let's see if Lodge can indeed take his opponent to the underworld, or if Daria will shine.
So a full kickback for the Daria player. Getting an insight into Match Missile, which is always pretty good, but you definitely want something to be spell boosting along with those cards.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a bad hand. He needs to draw some gas. That's pretty much the name of the game here.
And the Mordecai is
So
already in the hand of Lodge, so
opts to use his insight there. Now, depending on how you look at it, drawing that Chimera can be a little bit of a punish. Because especially if you look at his hand, he doesn't really have a turn 3 play, so potentially could have saved that insight for turn 3 to cast alongside something else, but decided that he just wanted to dig immediately. We'll see if that ends up being relevant or not. I suspect that it was a little bit of a misplay, although drawing this Mysterian Knowledge is going to give him that turn 3 play that he wanted.
I like playing the Insight turn 1. I think usually playing that, it just gives you the options to draw into your other cards to spell boost the turn after, just a little bit sooner.
Oh, it's certainly not always wrong, but if you can get an Insight that hits 2 spell boost cards versus one that hits none, it's just, I mean, it does make a good amount of difference.
So that Lyriel got Kaleidoscopic Load pretty quickly. Just a little bit of a board reset. Both these players just opting to draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah, I mean, both players just really need to draw into their power cards, and if they can't find them, we're not going to see much action for a little longer. Now, there are finally some Burial Rites cards, so, things could be picking up steam pretty quickly here.
Yeah, something like a Serid one off the top would be very powerful.
Absolutely.
You think we're going to see an Evo face here?
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, but when you have a powerful Evolve effect like Ceradan in your deck, it's, definitely don't have to.
He decides not to go for it. That Angelic Snipe is going to be pretty nice. It'll probably be able to pick up this 2-1 pretty cleanly.
You ready for the good stuff?
The void, it beckons me.
You think we're going to see this Chimera come down this turn? Or maybe something a little bit more tame like the Piercing Rune here, setting up for next turn.
I mean, the Chimera wouldn't be probably the worst thing he could do. There are not amazing targets in this deck that just Chimera destroys. I mean, Ceradan is probably the best one that comes to mind.
Finally a break. Did you like it?
But just trying to gain some tempo before kind of, the inevitable pop-off of the Shadow player is definitely worth something.
And this is going to clean up.
Unfortunately, yeah. Going to be very cleanly answered.
There's a Death Dragon Caller, finally finding something that he can use to reanimate. That's going to be a couple turns away, though. That will be a way to get back that Mordecai in just a little bit.
Yeah, so not exactly cheating the Mordecai out, turn 8. But still good to get it on the field. And with a very slow draw from the Daria player, that's probably going to be relevant.
And another thing that might be pretty relevant is this is going to be an overdraw next turn for the Daria player. If this is an overdraw of something like their Daria, or just a big spell boost follower, that can really hurt.
Alright, so he's got the option of playing Death's Breath here, but potentially he wants to greed for the Iktar next turn. Nope, just decides a bunch of 2/3 wards is fine.
And I like this. I think playing the Death's
Yeah,
Breath
it's not a
when
terrible
he's got a
play.
good chance to do it. It refunds quite a bit of shadows. It costs you 6, but it refunds 4 once all of it's said and done.
Yeah, so you know, once you confront the shadow, it's not as bad a deal as it looks. Now we're gonna see if he decides to use his last evolve point.
Something you really don't want to be doing against somebody who's still got all 3 of theirs.
Yeah, definitely puts you in a very awkward spot here, where, you know, if you don't use your evolve point, this Iktar is gonna be pretty good. If you do use your evolve point, well, you're down 3 evolve points against Shadow, which is not ideal. And unfortunately, this Magic Owl only hitting a Enchanted Sword and a Wind Blast.
And that Enchanted Sword was already at one cost when he played that Magic Owl.
Definitely not the most stellar evolve there.
Yeah. The Daria having a bit of a hard time here, not finding their Daria and not finding any other really high impact cards that they need. They did have the Golem Assaults. That is a pretty high impact card, but not quite what he needs here.
Yeah, Golem Assault tends to be good in these sort of like drawn out games, but I mean, not looking amazing here. And So Death Reap Life is going to potentially get another Mordecai next, starting next turn.
Yeah, this turn I don't think it can pull anything too impressive.
I'm curious what it does pull this turn.
It would pull a Pure Hearted Singer this turn.
Yeah, 5 mana Pure Hearted Singer, definitely not the most impressive plays.
The Demon Lord XR isn't quite good enough here because you don't have the shadows, so you do actually have a bit of an awkward turn here.
Yeah, I mean, the Evolve definitely does make Demon Lord Iktar a little bit more awkward. Unfortunately, because he still has all his Evolves, he can kind of just start using those Evolves to clear and then play Iktar once he gets to his shadows.
Yeah, and with the Trials Curse here, not even going for it actually. The Trials Curse would have just been able to deal with the whole thing.
Decides that he wants to draw cards instead, which, I mean, he's a Shadow player. You gotta respect that.
This song's for you.
Getting rid of his card draw, saying I want a different card draw card.
A cheaper card draw card.
And that, he picked up a second zombie party there, and I think that's going to be pretty relevant considering that we do have Conjure Guardians being the only followers in the hand, and actually another Golem Assault just being picked up.
Yeah, and yeah, he does decide to go for that, and I'm not surprised. Fortunately, I mean, this Death Dragon Caller is just going to really lock him out, I think.
Yeah, getting a Mordecai started is always very hard to deal with.
Oof.
Especially when you're behind on board. You're not even here.
Yeah, I mean, just no Daria's in sight anywhere. Namesake card, without the namesake card of the deck, you're just, playing kind of a mediocre spell boost deck.
Lodge deciding, you know what, I want to hold my Evolves till next game.
Yeah, man, I mean, good on him. He's far enough ahead at this point that I don't blame him.
He doesn't need to use them. There's no real reason to feel obligated to play him out.
I mean, this is a cute board, but it's just not enough.
Yeah,
there's an activated Iktar now.
Between all the followers on board and the zombie party or the XR, he's got so many different ways to clear this board. Is basically the moral of the story here.
Yeah, I mean, if he really wants to, he can even hit face with this Mordecai. No, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
He could trade with the Mordecai, he could Trots Curse it. He has so many different options. He could trade with it, Trots Curse it, and then Demon Lord Ektar to give it Rush.
Yeah, or just make another Mordecai,
Yeah.
Can't forget that one.
That's a pretty solid play.
Ready or not?
How can you expect forgiveness?
Decides, you know what? One Mordecai is just not enough. I need to.
Don't mind me.
Just gotta really, really prove who's the boss here. Opts for Zombie Party over Trust Curse. Kind of interesting there.
What do you think he's saving
Just
the Trials
figuring-
Curse for? Maybe something like a Dario if that ever comes down.
Yeah. I assume. I mean, at this point, he's so far ahead that he might just be playing cards. But there is a little bit of a reasoning in terms of, you know, Zombie Party kills a 3/3 pretty cleanly. That's one of the best targets you can get for it. Whereas a Trotz Curse can hit a Daria, can hit a Chimera,
Something just a little
can
bit.
hit a Enchanted Sword, Blade Mage. Yeah, I assume Iktar just has to be lethal here.
It's got to be so much damage. You can go Ektar and then you can Trotz Curse your Ektar. That's got to be it.
I mean, this is just, yeah. This is lights out.
This is more than enough damage. And assuming Lodge sees this line, which I think he will. Ektar doing as he does best, closing games out.
Absolutely.
Woo! He's got the stuff.
And he does indeed got the stuff.
He had the stuff and more than enough to close that one out.
Alrighty, so you know, an exciting game one. Kind of unfortunate for the Daria player, didn't draw their namesake card, but they're gonna go to their sideboards now and then get right back in it for game two.
Now, what do you think these players are going to bring in?
Now, that's an interesting question. I mean, Mordecai obviously performed very well there, but I don't actually think it's the most amazing target to reanimate in this matchup. I mean, the Daria boards are just going to be really big. You know, Mordecai is more about grinding out a slow opponent, which Daria is not really, well, not usually, that game being kind of a big exception.
But it doesn't really matter how strong the Daria board is if you're able to get a Mordecai plus a test of strength down. The Daria can never get over that. Well,
Test of strength only lasts for a couple turns, but as long as it's going, then they're gonna really struggle. So that's definitely one line. If he just thinks, you know what, I just want to play this game defensively, I think I can just outgrind him, then he could definitely go for the triple Mordecai with the test of strengths. Another axis you could take is just, you know, just try to slam Zeus's, right? And that works pretty well against Daria a lot of the time.
mm-hmm. There is a second Death's Breath in the sideboard. Maybe something like that will come down. That doesn't really match up all too well against Conjure Golems, though. The Conjure Guardians.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't match up all too well against most of the Daria creatures. I mean, they're 3/4s, 4/4s, 5/5s. They don't really care too much about 2/3s.
Maybe a Ceres? There are 2 Cereses in the sideboard. Maybe that's something that'll be pretty strong to bring in against Daria. But even that, I feel, doesn't really excel in the matchup.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think that he needs to make too many changes. I mean, he won game one. He's looking good. If anything, he might want to speed up a little bit if his opponent decides to. I think his opponent has a giant chimera on the sideboard, perhaps.
He has a single giant chimera in the sideboard.
Yeah. So, I mean, if the giant chimera comes in, and you know, you definitely don't want to try to slow the game down against that. That will not really care about your Mordecai too much. So. I don't think he's looking to slow the game down too much. I think his main board is pretty solid in this matchup. The Daria player is really going to be the one potentially pressed to make changes here.
And we do have
2 Corpse Lord of Woe. That's an interesting potential inclusion.
Yeah, maybe
I could possibly see those coming in.
Those are also pretty good with the test of strengths.
Yeah, they're pretty good with the test of strength, and they're also just, I mean, they're sticky and they can test the board around. They're sticky they don't get traded over too easily by the Daria creatures, and they contest the board around the turns when Daria is trying to really go off. The only downside being, of course, it does get cleaned out by a Chimera, but if you evolve it, at least the Chimera can only halfway clear it. It has to evolve to get the whole thing. So we'll see what he decides to do. I'm kind of interested to see what he brings in, and hopefully we'll get to see a bunch of sideboard cards in this next game.
I think so. There's a one of Clark, Arcane Scholar, in the sideboard of this Runecraft list. You think this might be the matchup to bring that in? I feel like that gives you a good way to speed up a bit.
Yeah, that could be an option.
So these players are ready, but actually the wrong person is hosting this game, so we're gonna need to get that fixed. And here we go, we have that room now.
Alright, sweet.
So some other cards in the sideboard. So we're seeing quite a few of these. Players are bringing in, not bringing in, but they have to bring in 2 Commence Experiments. This is the second rune list that we've seen, second Daria list, with 2 Commence Experiments in the sideboard. I assume that's for some of their slower matchups to help out with their concentrations or to help out with their Conjure Golems or their Golem Assaults.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting choice. I mean, I've seen that, and then the other card I've seen, not in this tournament, but is Silent Laboratory. And I liked that card a good bit when I played it in D-Shift. So these players opting for Commence Experiment, kind of it's definitely not what I would have expected. I'm kind of surprised that both of the players that we've seen so far have opted to start with Daria and then transition into Giant Chimera instead of even trying to play D-Shifts.
Yeah, I had expected the Runecraft lists to try to either start out as D-Shift or to try to turn into D-Shift, but it doesn't seem like that's quite the case.
Yeah, and that, I mean, there are multiple reasons why that could be, but in my experience, I do think that the matchup with D-Shift versus Reanimate Shadows is frankly not that bad, so it's a little interesting that they have decided to shy away from that.
Time to shine,
But alright. Looks like we're back in the game.
Alright, so Insight, always nice to have as turn 1 for Daria. Can spell boost the Blade Mage, but not quite what you want to be spell boosting, I feel.
Alright, getting a second spell boost card is definitely nice. Still looking for that gas, though.
Lurching Corpse, not exactly the 2-drop you want to play, but better to play a 2-drop than nothing.
Well, we'll see if he decides to agree with you or not.
If you're in this position, would you play this Lurching Corpse, or would you decide not to?
Well, honestly, I think I probably would just pass without playing anything. The Lurching Corpse is potentially going to get in a couple points of damage. Probably not super relevant. and you know, if he didn't have the Golem Assaults in his hand, maybe he has to play Wind Blast as his only spell, and if you don't play the Lurching Corpse, maybe he just has to pass.
Now we've already seen, so there's a second Mordecai, so we already saw one get thrown away to this Everdark Strix, and the second one's already in the hand. So it seems like these Mordecais have come in. I wonder if that also means the Test of Strengths have come in as well.
Yeah, I'm interested to find out.
And there's the third Mordecai.
Right. Oh wow, okay, so decided that he does want all the Mordecais in this matchup. You know, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I have not tested this myself. Oh, is that also a sideboarded Kawi?
Yeah, that is the second Kawi.
Alright. So Kawi is a good card against Daria, I believe. Because you can frequently get 2-for-1s, regain large chunks of life because their creatures are, you know, pretty good size.
This is a very awkward shadow hand.
Yeah, this is
looking for a zombie party.
Well, a Ceridwen off the top would be pretty sweet. Alright, well, Aisha's playable card, but decides that he would much rather just draw more cards.
And I would assume we're going to see the second Lurching Corpse come down here.
Yeah, at this point, there's something on board. It's going to get something, so may as well.
Really looking for something like a zombie party there. Zombie party would have been able to help him clean up this whole board and actually leave something up on the board.
Oh yeah, zombie party would have been awesome. But sadly, just a Lurching Corpse, so... You know, 1-2 staring down a 2-2, you know, we're definitely behind this Shadow now. I mean, we have this Kawi in our hand. Actually, we have 2 of them, so those, you know, those can allow us to stall for a good amount of time, but we have to get to them, and that means we have to get through our turn 6, which at the moment is not looking very strong.
And that's a pretty strong Daria that we just got here. Drawing into the second Daria, not spell boosting that one, but it did spell boost a Blade Mage and a Chimera.
Yeah, this is looking pretty sweet right now.
Almost enough to be able to play that Enchanted Sword too, but not quite there.
So close. So let's see. Okay, there's the Corpse Lord of Woe too. So pretty heavy sideboard plan here.
In this spot though, this Corpse Lord really isn't very good. Hoping for something like your Ceridwen there.
Not looking quite as strong as it usually does. Interesting choice here. So Obstacle with the Corpse Lord. So that means he is really not expecting to be killed this turn, which he actually might be. If this Mysterian Knowledge pulls a missile, he's gonna die. Oh, alright. Dodged a bullet there. I mean, this is still gonna be rough. Now, if he doesn't evolve this, I think that's a pretty heads-up play, honestly.
Oh, and there it is.
Oh, there we go. Never mind.
Just double checking, counting, making sure he has the lethal. Gonna recognize that he has it, it seems. Alright, so we're going to a 1-1 here.
Yeah, and, wow, okay. I mean, drew a lot of Mordekaisers, Kawis, Zeus, just nothing to pull them with.
Yeah, he had a lot of his high end and not really the early game he needed to keep up there.
Didn't get any Ceridwens, didn't actually even make it to turn 7, which is, you know, kind of embarrassing when you're putting in a lot of Kawis, but I mean, Daria will do that to you sometimes.
Now, I feel like both these players in their games have had pretty reasonable draws, but I don't think they've had their nuts yet. I'd like to see what it looks like to have both these players just draw their nuts. One person goes crazy, gets a very early Daria, the other one getting their early Mordecai or their early Zeus.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see.
Okay, so these players are deciding to go back to their sideboards. Maybe Lodge deciding, maybe I brought in too much high in that game.
Here's something interesting about Lodge's list, and I'm sure he has good reasoning for why he brought in the cards he did, or why he is playing the cards he did. But I don't see any Soul Squashers.
I'm double checking, but I didn't see any either.
And I mean, between a 40 card main deck and a 12 card sideboard, I think I would have liked to see at least one. You know, just try to keep them honest about their evos.
Yeah, just the presence of at least of just having one Soul Squasher in your sideboard can make your opponent not make a certain play. Just because, you know, I don't really want to get hit by that Miser Soul Squasher.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, I didn't test this deck, but I really think that card is, you know, it's a powerful sideboard choice because you go to your sideboard and your opponent doesn't know if you brought in Soul Squashers or not. And, you know, against a deck like Daria, I think Soul Squasher could be a pretty powerful card to bring in. Just having that extra removal, able to 2-for-1 them.
Or if you decide to main deck it, your opponent wouldn't know if you sided them out.
Yeah, either way. I mean, just make them play around it a little bit.
So in just a moment, these players will be done sideboarding and we'll be able to jump into their game. Now, I wonder if both of these players are sideboarding or if they're just taking some time to make it seem like they sideboarded just to get that mind games in.
My guess would be they're both just kind of looking over their deck, thinking, you know, all right, what happened last game? Is there anything that I need to change? You know, I mean, just it's a smart strategy. If you're given time between games, you want to take it.
If you don't take that time, you can be giving away information to your opponent. Not something you really want to be doing. Every single little point that you can take, every little edge matters in these types of games.
Yeah, and I mean, sideboarding always brings up the interesting questions of, you know, should I sideboard because last game went poorly or not? Because, you know, you always have the option to say, okay, well, last game didn't work, maybe I need to try a new plan. But on the flip side of that, there's also always the possibility that, you know, maybe last game just didn't break your way. You know, I mean, maybe it really was just you didn't draw the Ceridwen. So it can be really tricky, and I think it's a sign of a good player to be able to kind of differentiate between when what they're doing isn't working and when, you know, there really is variance at play.
So Jengajam still looking over his sideboard. Taking a bit more time, but I believe he's going to be jumping into this a little bit soon. In a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Jengajam came back from down from 0-1. I don't know if we saw many sideboard cards from him.
Yeah, both the times we've looked at these Runecraft lists, the sideboards haven't seemed too great.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It doesn't look super impressive here. You know, we've got a couple more copies of cards that are already in the deck, some cards to slow down. Just not really stuff that you particularly want in this matchup. But you know, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not entirely sure when, in general, I would want to bring in, say, Conjure Golem.
I was hoping that from these rune lists, we might have seen something crazy like they put in a couple extra Earth Sigils in their sideboard. We do see a couple Commence Experiments, but like maybe something like a couple Earth Sigils, couple Commence Experiments, couple Silent Labs, and maybe a couple Master Mage Levi's.
You know what I was expecting to see in these sideboards that I haven't seen at all is Mutable.
Yeah, you're right.
That card just decks Reanimate Shadow.
Yeah, that card is actually really dirty.
Absolutely smashes Mordecai, Kawi, Zeus. And, you know, I think it might be a little bit of an oversight. I think, you know, we might be seeing more people citing that card in if we do another one of these. Because we've definitely seen the rune decks, or the shadow decks to justify it.
There was also a point in time where Daria lists actually main decked Dimension Shift too. And I was kind of thinking we might have seen something like that in the sideboard where they have the Dimension Shift and maybe a Frozen Mammoth or two. Just try and get that crazy draw going on.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of flexibility in these rune decks. And, you know, I mean, I don't want to say that these sideboards are wrong, but I think there might be a little more opportunity for kind of power cards, innovative cards, than they're really taking advantage of.
It would take a few events like this, I think, before players really start getting really creative and figuring out the niche cards that they can bring. I would like to see a format like this evolve over time.
So we've got the Daria player on the play, opts to go for his Ogler on turn 3. We've seen this one before. Definitely not quite as good against Shadow as it is against something like Sword, but you know, we will definitely see it trade over something here, so still pretty powerful.
Everdark Strix is pretty quality here, being a nice card to just round out the turn. It does get eaten up by this Ogler, but you kind of want to go face with that Ogler. You don't really want to trade with it.
Yeah.
And if
another card that I think was missing from the Shadow Player's sideboard is, you know, I'm actually blanking on the name. It's that the new 6-drop legendary.
Saradwin? Eternity Hunter?
Yes. In that, you know, I think that's a powerful card if you just want more ways to reanimate things, which, you know, I could see there being matchups where you just want to have more ways to reanimate things. You're not super worried about keeping tempo.
Soul Conversion, just trying to find more options. Pure Hearted Singer, exactly what you're looking for there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's perfect.
That Magic Owl is a very strong pickup. Gonna allow him to go crazy next turn with this Daria.
Absolutely. This is going to be a huge turn for him. There's still no reanimators in the Shadow player's hand, which means that, you know, unless he draws one soon, it's going to be waiting till turn 7 for Kawi, which, I mean, we remember how that went last time. He tried to wait for it, and he just ran out of time.
Yeah, this Shadow deck doesn't really leave anything potent behind on the board unless it's one of its big reanimate cards. Other than that, it's got a couple 2/1s, a couple 1/2s. And when you're playing Pure Hearted Singer, you are playing 3 mana for a Goblin. That's really not the best in the world.
No, certainly not. But like I said, this is also a situation where I think that a mutable from the Rune player could be very, very powerful on these kind of sort of anemic draws where, you know, if he can get to turn 7, this Kawi has the potential to get him back in the game, right? Where a mutable would just absolutely shut that down, give him pretty much nothing.
Look at this Magic Owl. This Magic Owl's about to go crazy. Gonna get an enchanted sword somewhere.
Yikes. There is a Lurching Corpse Trop's Curse in hand, so
that'll be able to clear up a lot of this.
As hard to clear up as last time.
There's also that zombie party too.
But this is still 4 followers, which is rough.
I think this one blast is just going to come down just because, why not? We're going to play the Daria anyway. Might as well get it out of the hand.
One blast would be pretty heads up in that it would stop Zombie Party from clearing anything. Yep. Okay, well there's Death Dragon Caller. That's the first one. Okay, I don't know how I feel about that.
It worked out for him. That's a risky play, playing that Fate's Hand. If that had hit something like a Daria, you're pretty sad.
Hitting even an Enchanted Sword is definitely not what you want. Ooh, oh my goodness. Another Ogler. Alright. Well, this is the kind of board that, you have nightmares about.
Yeah, and even if you can clear this, there's a whole reload ready to happen.
So it looks like we can take 2 of these followers off the board. And then, I mean, he will get down a Kawi into a Death Dragon Caller. So let's see if he can set up a plan to sort of get through that.
Oh, there's a Ceridwen, but I think that might be a little late now.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough. It's going to pull a Mordecai, I believe. Maybe a Zeus? If it pulls a Zeus, that's fairly relevant. I think we can check in the log.
I think, so 2 turns ago, Lodge had the opportunity to evolve his Pure-Hearted Singer to the face, and he decided not to do that. And this might be one of those situations where that might not be right, because if you die with evolves, that's never the right thing. You never want that to happen. I don't know if that's quite the case.
He's definitely going to get pretty low here. How much damage are we looking at? Potentially 14 if he decides to use his Evo here. And then 2 more in hand from the Piercing Rune. Of course, Lodge will start gaining some life with this Kawi, which can, it probably will get a 2-for-1 because it's gonna evolve over something and then get eaten by a Chimera from him. Oh, unless he just plays out the Chimera.
Yeah, no reason not to, right?
I mean, sort of.
I mean, you can play.
I think this Kawi is a reasonable reason not to.
But the sheer fact that it's still alive and on the board, it's gonna be able to just potentially get in 4 more damage to the face.
No, I'm not a huge fan of that trade.
Yeah, this sets up perfectly for this Piercing Rune, which I assume is just gonna be immediately played next turn.
Let's do this again, okay?
Alright. And decides that he's actually just dead on board, so.
Lodge is going to fall to the hands of Jengajam.
Wow, okay.
Jengajam is a name that, since the beginning of this season, not this season, but since the beginning of this expansion of Dawnbreak Night Edge, Jengajam has been coming up and popping his head out more and more. He seems to be a pretty strong player, being able to take out someone like Lodge, who's a namestay in our tournaments at this point. Every time we have a tournament, you see Lodge's name in the top 4 usually.
Yeah, no, definitely some impressive stuff from him, and all.